Okay, what are you saying, people, and welcome back to another weekly Forex analysis. So on the screen are the pairs we'll be looking at today, but make sure you stay to the end of the video because I'll be going into depth for each pair, analyzing what happened during this trading week and what could also be happening during next week's trading week. So make sure you stay to the end of the video for all of that. But with all that said, let's get straight into the charts. First up, we've got Euro USD. Okay, so first up we've got Euro USD. So for this week we saw some more continuation to the upside. Like I did say last week, we do expect to see one more push to the upside before we do see some strong retracement. And as you can see on Friday, that retracement really came through to the downside there. I did point out last week this trend line that we had in the market. So first, second test there, expecting to see a third test and then the push to the downside, and we did see a slight false break to the upside. You can see there on the daily chart, we did poke ahead above that area, kind of got a bit of a doji there, a bit of a spinning top, and then we saw a fall to the downside. So price right now is looking very bearish, and we were expecting to see some more retracement to the downside for Euro USD. As for targets, where I do expect this retracement to go to is this area here in the market, this 1.19 level here on the weekly. Really strong resistance there, broke back below, broke back above. So this is treating this as a bit of a false breakout. So now what I'm expecting to see is a bit of retracement to the downside, test this weekly area. If it does hold, then we expect the continuation to the upside, back to the highs all the way up there. So that is what we're favoring for Euro USD. However, if we do jump to the daily chart, you can see that the price right now is in a bearish trend, and we do have to respect that trend. You can see we've got our high up here, and then the market pushes down, creating a lower high, pushes back up, lower low, sorry, then we create that lower high there, then we push down, create a lower low here, and this potentially is our lower high. So we still have to respect that area. So potentially price could push all the way down to these lows here and actually create a lower low. So for that to happen, we need to break past our weekly level 1.19. So if you do push below it and then start holding as resistance, then potentially you could be seeing that lower low happen. So we are taking into account the higher time frames and obviously this bearish structure. However, my bias is very much to the upside long term. So I feel like this weekly level will hold, and then we'll see the continuation to the upside from that level. So targets for next week, Euro USD, expecting this bearish leg to continue back into the 1.19. So again, you can just be looking to ride those pullbacks to this level there in the market. We are coming back into this area of support here in the market. As you see, a nice reaction to the upside. So it'd be nice to see a bit of retracement next week to start off, potentially back to this area here in the market, previous support, now term resistance, and then after that we could potentially see that continuation to the downside, looking for that around that 1.19 area. So for next week, my bias is very much to the downside, but again would like to see some retracement first to get in on those pullbacks to capitalize on a continuation to the downside. Obviously there's a chance that price could just be really bearish and just continue without us to the downside and just go and hit 1.19 anyway, and that's the case, we'll be looking for buys in that zone. So again, wait for the price to turn bullish, and then we can capitalize on some nice longs to the upside from that area. So for next week, price should be moving lower, expecting to see a bit of a pullback first, then the continuation. So bias is very much to the downside, targeting that 1.19 area, and could be looking for some shorts if we do get that pullback into around this area, around 1.2068, and then capitalize on some shorts back into 1.19. Next, we're going to take a look at USD JPY. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at USD JPY. So for this pair, we saw a bit of a reversal, and price has some nice impulsive moves to the upside. I did say last week this is our key level. We're going to look to see what happens for next week. If price does reject this key level here on the retest, look for continuation back into these lows here. However, we did not get that move. Price actually broke above it. And I did say if it does break above, look for those retests and the continuation to the upside. Now, as you can see here, we did break above that area, retested it down the 4-hourly once, and then we saw some continuation to the upside after that. So my bias right now is to the upside for USD JPY. Looks like this was just a false break of that area there on the daily, and then we've had that impulse move back to the upside. So this potentially here could be a higher low, and we could be on our way back to these highs up there in the market. So looking for a continuation to the upside for USD JPY for next week. Again, looking for that retracement first. It'll be nice to get a bit of retracement. We do have this area here, this support where we did see price really take off. So it'd be nice to see a bit of retracement to the downside here first. Tap into this area here, which is around 108.800, and looking for the continuation, targeting any one of these highs here really. So this general area here, as you see, price being testing that area numerous times before having that big dump to the downside. So expecting to see a push back into this area here. Looking at the Friday chart, we might push a little bit higher, but bias is to the upside next week for USDJPY. Again, there could be a chance that we push through this area, tap back into this area for maybe a bit of a double bottom. So test it once, push up, test it twice, push up again. So if we do push back into this area again, looking for those buys, so kind of like two areas where we're interesting for buys for USDJPY. This is the first area, and that will probably be the second area if we do break through that. And then look for those buyers targeting this area up here around 109.800. So the next week bias is very much to the upside for USDJPY. We've broken back our key level and actually broken structure to the upside. So price is looking bullish now. So now expecting to see a bit of retrace so we can capitalize on those longs to the upside. First area looking for those buys around 108.800, or if you push past that, it'll be this area here, which is around 108.500. And next we've got USD CAD. Sorry to interrupt the video guys, but if you are enjoying the content and you find it useful, make sure you go hit the subscribe button down below, and also make sure you drop a like as well. It really does help the channel out. But anyway, back to the video. Okay, so now I'm going to take a look at USDJPY. So for USDJPY this week, as you can see, we had a really nice drop to the downside here. I did say last week, look for those sells because price has a good chance of falling to the downside, since we were rejecting our key level 1.26200. Had about a triple top there. You can see 1, 2, 3. We actually tested it more times in the lower time frames, but on the daily looks like a bit of a triple top there, and we had that continuation to the downside. So was expecting to see price push back into these lows here and potentially even a lower low, and we actually made it to around 1.23. So right now price is looking very, very bearish. However, for this week, I think we could be seeing a push to the upside for USD CAD. So if I actually drop to the weekly and I zoom out and look left, you can see we're coming back into this area of support here in the market. As you can see, we had this push to the upside, pull back, found support here, and actually had this really impulsive push breaking through those highs in the market not too long ago, back in 2018. So if we do take that level across, as you can see, we're tapping back into the level for the first time. So I do expect to see some sort of bullish reaction here for USD CAD. Looking from the weekly time frame, we might wick past this area, so we might force break it a couple of times. You need to be aware of that because the market is very, very bearish right now. So we will be waiting for the market to turn bullish before looking for those signs, but we are coming back into a very strong area of support. So if I jump to the 4-hourly time frame, we'll be looking for longs generally in this area. So if price was to push to the downside one more time, maybe wick below, give us a nice bullish intent, and then pull back a little bit, and then on that higher low or on that double bottom, could be looking to enter your long trades there, expecting to see a big push to the upside. And again, we've had this very impulsive push to the downside, so now we are expecting retrace as well. So that's another reason why we're expecting to see another push to the upside. And we do have this key area of support here in the 4-hourly time frame, which we did not see a retest of as price broke to the downside. So as you can see, support there, broke below, broke back above, strong support there, and just took off to the downside without any retest. So for next week, USD CAD looking for a push to the upside, but again, wait for that price to turn bullish first and then look for your buys, because as long as price stays bearish, you can actually break through the downside and continue that bearish move for USD CAD. So wait for price to show some nice bullish price action, push to the upside, pull back down, and then on that second higher low or the retest of that same area, look for those buys targeting around this area here, which is around 1.24740 for next week. Up next is Euro GBP. Okay, so now I'm going to take a look at Euro GBP. So for Euro GBP this week, not too much happened. As you can see there on the daily, we basically have consolidation. You can see it a little bit better on the H4. Price is basically just moving sideways. We're back at these previous highs there in the market, and we're struggling to break through it to the upside, but also struggling to break away from this to the downside as well. So price essentially is just moving sideways for Euro GBP. However, my bias from last week still stands. I still expect to see a push to the upside looking at this pair from a weekly point of view. So if we drop to the weekly, you can see we're seeing really strong bullish price action, and we do have this key area of support here in the market, which does look like price is coming back to go and retest there again. So strong bullish reaction. Looks like last week, well, 2 weeks ago, had a bit of a pullback with that bearish candle, continuation with that bullish candle, struggling to break through the highs, but I do expect those highs to be broken through and see a bit of a push to the upside. So my bias very much is to the upside for EUR/GBP. However, with this consolidation here in the market, we actually might see a retrace to the downside first. Again, we do have this key level here on the H4, which did not get a retest as we broke above. So resistance was acting as support, false break below, expect and see a retest, which we did not get. So if we do see price break out of this consolidation, this range to the downside, we'll be looking for buys in this area, capitalize on the long to the upside. Or if price does break to the upside here, comes back down to retest that area, could be looking for those longs to the upside. So my bias is to the upside for next week for EUR/GBP. If you do break to the downside, looking for those longs there, or we can look to capitalize on that move to the downside if you drop to the lower time frames. But for me personally, we'll be looking for those longs around this level here, or if you do have that breakout to the upside. And targets will be this last kind of previous resistance before we did have a big dump to the downside. So you can see the market, we had this bit of consolidation and price really fell to the downside, and we haven't come back to retest that area yet. So this is where I'm expecting price to go to around 0.87900 is the targets for next week for EUR/GBP. So two areas to look for next week for potential buying opportunities. Again, this key area here, which is around 0.86400, or if we break to the upside, retest, and then look for that continuation to around 0.87900. Okay, so up next we've got AUD/USD. Okay, so for this week for AUD/USD, we had some more continuation to the upside before having a big sell-off towards the end of the week, basically on Friday for AUD/USD. So price was trading around this area here in the market at this nice support and a push to the upside. So I was saying if we come back again, another retest, look for those buys back to highs up there into this resistance. As you see, price took off to the upside without a pullback, so it didn't really give us an opportunity, but then we did come back and test that area. So price was looking quite bullish for AUD/USD for most of the week, and a bit of a pullback there, and another drive back into that area. Had that triple top, price fell to break through, and then had this very impulsive move to the downside on Friday. So right now price is looking quite bearish here. It looks like we are failing to take through to break through this key area of resistance here on the daily, 0.78. Again, we've been talking about that level quite some time, has a lot of significance. And also we do have this key support there, 0.76500. So that's where I'm expecting price to go to for next week for AUD/USD, 0.76500, this support here. And if we break through that, then we'll probably tap back into this support here in the market. As you can see, when we do break through that 0.76500 level, this level here, we do come and tap this area here. As you can see, break, tap that area, break, tap that area. So if you break that again, price is more likely than not going to come back and tap that area. So for next week, bias is very much to the downside for AUD/USD. Again, it would be nice to get a bit of a pullback to the upside first to give us some entries, because again, we're coming back into that support. You can really see we've got a bit of a doji there. So price is respecting that area so far. So it'd be nice to get a bit of a pullback, look for those shorts, capitalize on a nice push to the downside back to 0.76500, this level here. And if you break through that, then look for a retest of that area as resistance and a continuation back to the low. So the next week, bias is very much to the downside for AUD/USD. Again, we do have previous support here in the market, which will be term resistance. So that could be a nice level to look for some sells there, and then expecting to see another push to the downside. Again, first target around there, 0.76500 mark. Then the next target will be this low, which is around 0.75800, give or take. So biases to the downside for next week, expecting a little bit of a pullback. It might take off without us, but if it does give us a pullback, nice area for entry around here, looking for a move to the downside. Now let's take a look at NZD CAD. Okay, so for NZD CAD this week, we had a big dump to the downside towards the end of the week. So price right now is looking very, very bearish. Again, we have this key level here of support and resistance here on the daily, and we were trading underneath that area, so it was acting as resistance. I said if we do manage to go and break through this support here in the market, which is kind of keeping us in a little bit of a range, you can see prior to that price was in a range here, stuck above that, we broke through. I said we do have a good chance of testing this area again here, since we did not have a retest. So we came and hit that area, but price went a lot further than that, as you can see. So overall price is looking very bearish. And if you do take a look at the higher time frames, you see the overall structure of the market. You see we have this big impulsive move to the downside, this move here looks like just to be retraced of that move, and now it looks like we're getting a continuation. So with that in mind, I do predict to see more downside continuation for NZD CAD in the next coming days and weeks. So again, we do have this area here in the market of really strong support. So if I just draw this out, as you can see, really strong support, big push to the upside, tapped it again, and a very big push to the upside. So that is where I'm expecting price to go and push on for NZD CAD. So with that in mind, I'm expecting these lows here to be taken out and seeing some more continuation to go and test those levels down there. So bias is to the downside for NZD CAD, expecting a move back into around 0.86500. Again, that will probably take maybe a week or two to get there, but with that in mind, expecting to see a push into these lows. Again, the market is very, very overextended right now, so looking for a bit of retracement to the upside, and then could be capitalizing on some more moves to the downside. So bias is to the downside for NZD CAD. Again, we do have this resistance here in the market, which will be acting as resistance there again. So if you were to push back into this area, that would be a really nice area to look for those shorts, expecting to see another move back to those lows again. Or there could be a strong possibility that the price just opens back on when the market opens and just continues without us to the downside. With that case, you can look for those some re-entries, again support term resistance, then capitalize on another move to the downside. But anyway, overall direction for NZD CAD is still very much the downside. Overall targets around 0.86500. So any push, any movements that we have to the upside, we're going to treat that as retracement, looking to capitalize on a continuation to the downside. Next up, we've got GBP NZD. Okay, so with GBP/NZD this week, not too much happened. As you can see on the daily, a lot of consolidation. You can see a little bit better on the 4H. Price didn't really move anywhere. We did have targets at this support here in the market, and then some more downside targets around 1.91, which is this support here in the market. As you can see, we did hit the first target of that support. However, we did not get to this area here. As you can see, we were rejecting that 1.92 area. This support tested it once, a second time, and really had a bit of a bullish reaction. And also, it does look like we're breaking through this bearish trend line here in the market. So connecting these lows here. So first, second, third, fourth, fifth, had a sixth test there, and we actually broke it on our seventh. So price right now looks like it's failing to break that 1.92 area, and looks like we could be seeing a bit of a push to the upside. And also taking a look at the daily, we also have this bullish trend line keeping us in a bit of a bullish trend here in the market. So connecting these major points here in the market. So first, second, third, looks like we had a bit of a fourth not too long ago. Fifth, we did break through it, and now looks like it's holding as resistance. So overall price is probably just moving sideways because of those factors there, the trend line, the support, and the trend line on the 4H. So a lot of buyers and sellers against each other there. But I do think if we do take out this resistance here in the market, which is essentially holding us moving sideways, so again this resistance here, so support, 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 resistance, resistance. If we do break through that area with the trend line breaking the 4H as well, I do think we could be seeing a bit of a push to the upside and have a bit of a false breakout of that trend line on the daily, and see a push back into this area here in the market, which is where we have this big push to the upside. This could just be retracement of that move, and then we could see some more continuation. However, if we do break to the downside, then my bias from last week will come back in. We will see a push to 1.91 and then probably 1.9 after that. So we do have a really strong area of support, which is where we had this big move to the upside start from. So we could potentially come back to this area, and if we do, we've definitely broken through our daily trend line at that point. So we'll probably having a reversal on our hands at that point, and probably see GBP/NZD go a lot further to the downside. But right now, price is stuck in a range here. So again, if you're looking at those lower time frames, could take advantage of this resistance here, drop to lower time frames, looking for a swing back into that support, and again looking for a swing back into that resistance as price continues to range. However, if we do take out that resistance here around 1.93, I do think we've got a nice journey back up to 1.95, that resistance, then potentially higher, continue with that overall bullish daily trend. Or if you do break to the downside, we've got targets at 1.91, then potentially 1.9. So again, just staying on your toes, see what happens with price action. If you do have a breakout, because for next week, we could actually just stay within those two levels there and just continue with some more sideways price action. But if you do see a breakout, we know price could potentially push to 1.95 or push back down to 1.9. Next, we're going to move on to CAD JPY. Okay, so for CAD JPY this week, as you can see, price absolutely took off to the upside, looking very bullish here. Again, we have this trend line here in the market, which was keeping us in a bit of a bearish trend. I said if you do maintain respect to this trend line, look for those shorts. If you do take out this support here, then look to capitalize on a nice move to the downside. However, again, as you see, that never happened. Price maintained that support, actually broke through our trend line, broke through our resistance as well. As you can see, price support and resistance, strong close above. No retest for us to enter, and prices kind of took off to the upside. So there was no major pullback for me to get involved in this push to the upside. Maybe if you're looking trading in the lower time frames like the 15-minute, you could have maybe got a nice pullback entry, looking to capitalize on that move to the upside, taking out these previous highs. But overall, CAD JPY is still very bullish, creating some new highs in the market. So on the high time frames, daily, weekly, monthly, we are very much in a bullish market for CAD JPY. Right now, we are coming into an area of resistance. So as you can see, this area here in the market, actually, if I go to the daily, see a little bit better. So if I scroll across, zoom into this area, you can see really nice area of resistance here and a bit of consolidation, and then have this big dump to the downside. So we're coming to test that area again for the first time now for CAD JPY, as you can see with this week's close. And I do think we'll see a bit of a bearish reaction. You can see the market is quite overextended here. We had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday giving us bullish candles there. So practically the whole week was bullish. So I'm expecting to see a bit of retrace now. Again, nothing major because the market is still bullish. We have to respect that. But I'm expecting to see some retrace from this 89 area to the downside before maybe another continuation. Overall target for CAD JPY is in fact 91, which is this level here in the market. So I do think this is the overall target for CAD JPY before we start to see a major bearish trend in the market if we do storm through this level. So overall target is 91. With that in place, I do expect to see a bit of retracement to the downside first. Again, you can look to capitalize on that if the market does give us some more bearish price action. So push the downside, give us a nice push, and then all on that pullback, if you do create a lower high or maybe a double top, could look to capitalize on some shorts and a nice push to the downside. So the next week, expecting to see a push to the downside for CAD JPY, since we have created those new highs coming into a very strong area of resistance. Expect to see a bit of a pullback to the downside, maybe back to this area around here, and then see some continuation back again to the upside. So bias is to the upside, look for those shorts around that 89 mark, looking for a nice move to the downside back to around 87 before some more buys back into the market. Up next is GBP USD. Okay, so for GBP USD this week, we had some more upside continuation. Like I did say last week, we had a really key level that price was testing, that we wanted to see price come back and test one more time before looking for those buys for this week for GBP USD. So we had this support here. We wanted to see one more push to the downside to go and retest that support, show price was rejecting it, then look for those buys back up to 1.4, which is this key level of resistance here in the market. As you can see, we did not quite get that opportunity for GBPUSD. There were some buys in there, but we didn't really come back and test that level. Had some more continuation, didn't quite go and test 1.4 anyway before price had this really strong bearish reaction. So for GBPUSD, I think I might be shifting my bias to the downside. However, we still do have this key support intact in the market. So as you can see, support, big reaction to the upside, support, bit of a false breakout there, and again acting as support there as well. So I think if you do see price break through that level, I do see price pushing back into these lows here in the market and potentially even further, because looking at this this market from a weekly point of view, if we do disregard that support there in the market, we've got bearish price action here. Looks like we were trying to go bullish last week, pull back down, failed to do so. Then we tried to push on again this week, pull back down and actually closed bearish, giving us a bearish shooting star. So this potentially is some tweezer tops plus a bit of a bearish shooting star, giving us very, very bearish price action, indicating that there's a good chance that next week could close bearish as well. So taking that that information into our low time frames like the 4H, the daily, we know that potentially next week could be bearish. In that case, we do expect to see a break of that daily support that we had in the market and a push back into the low. So that is why I'm expecting to see a push to the downside for next week for GBPUSD. And as you can see as well, this bearish price action is very, very strong. We have very choppy bullish candles pushing to the upside, very weak candles. Then we have this strong bearish candle indicating that price actually does want to move down. So for next week, I'm expecting to see a break of this support and a push to the downside. But again, it's never good to sell into support, so I wouldn't want to sell the market right now. And again, it's very overextended, so it'd be nice to see a bit of retracement, maybe half the way up, giving us another lower high in the market, then looking for the continuation to the downside, anticipating a break of that support. Or a little bit more conservative, could be a break of that, nice break, retail show some rejections, and then look for the shorts after that. So kind of two different ways or two different opportunities to look to short GBPUSD. But as you can see in the market, we're getting these lower highs now in the market, so it'd be nice to push back up one more time, give us another lower high potentially, and then we can look for those shorts, anticipating another move back into the support, or break through, hold as resistance, then the continuation back down to around 1.36800. So bias is very much to the downside for next week, as long as we stay below this resistance here in the market. If we take that out, we might turn bullish again, but overall bias is to the downside for next week. Looking for a bit more retracement for GBPUSD, then one more leg to the downside back down to 1.36800. And next we're going to see what's happening with GBP CAD. Okay, so now we've got GBP CAD. So for GBP CAD, we saw more continuation to the downside. Like I did say last week, we are expecting to see more continuation to the downside for GBP CAD back to 1.72, and then if we break through that a lot further, potentially tap into 1.7. As you can see, just before the weekly candle close, we did go and hit 1.7 down there. So we're trading around this area last week, I believe, and I said that I'll be looking for some pullbacks into this area here. However, as you can see, price did not get that pullback, kind of just consolidated for a little bit and continued to the downside, hitting our target 1.72 and breaking past that and continuing on. So we did not get that pullback to that area and then look for the short. So price overall was very bearish last week, didn't give much pullbacks there for GBP CAD. Again, if you're trading in the lower time frames, maybe the 15 or the 30 minute, might have got some decent sized pullbacks on those time frames. But looking at this from a 4 hourly or even hourly, we didn't get too much of a pullback there, but price overall was very bearish for GBP CAD this week. So for this week, I do expect to see more continuation can happen to the downside for GBP CAD. Got this key area of support here on the daily, which I do think we're coming back to revisit here, which is around 1.68. So you can see support, failing to break through this area for the past year or so now for GBP CAD. So I do think we'll come back and test that area, and we did break through this key area of support here in the market. As you can see, support, broken through that finally. I do see more downside continuation for next week for GBP CAD. So bias is the downside, expecting a test of 1.68. It would be nice to see if we can get some pullbacks, like I said last week, some pullbacks potentially back into this area or maybe halfway, then look for the continuation back to the downside for GBP CAD. But again, like last week, because the market is so bearish, we might just open and see some more continuation to the downside without us for next week for GBP CAD testing at 1.68. But if that does happen, I will be looking for buys in this area, since the market is very overextended. As you can see, we have this high up here and price has just been pushing down, chopping away. So if price does push back to 1.68 without us, so we open the market and we just see more bearish price action continuing down, we'll be waiting for the market to turn bullish and looking to see if we can get some buys for next week for GBP CAD. Or if we do see some bullish price action pushing to the upside and we haven't tested 1.68 yet, wait for that pullback, give me some bearish price action, and we'll be looking to ride this down back into 1.68 for next week. Okay, up next we've got GBP JPY. Okay, so for GBP JPY this week, we actually saw a push to the upside. Last week, I was favoring for a push to the downside for GJ, so I was wrong with that move there. We had this nice trend line here. We broke to the downside. Also looks like we're breaking through this support here as well. I was expecting to see this area hold and give us another move back into this support here, and then potentially that support all the way down here in the market. However, we did obviously not get that move. Price actually broke back above that resistance there, broke above back that trend line as well, indicating that we're actually going to go bullish, and we did see price take off to the upside. So price right now is looking quite bullish. However, we did fall to the downside quite strongly, and you can see on the daily we still do have potentially another head and shoulders on the cards here. As you can see, this was a really nice push to the upside, giving us new highs, fell to the downside quite strongly, push above those areas, giving us a new high, push back below, and now we're failing to break back above that area, giving us a potential head and shoulders. So if this is a head and shoulders, so shoulder, head, shoulder, we do expect to see a bigger push to the downside back into this support, and then potentially even further if we are having a reversal for GBJPY. But right now my bias is to the downside, mainly because we're failing to break through that area there. If we were to push on and instead of Friday's candle be bearish like that, was breaking above, then my bias would be to the upside, expecting to see price push on back to the highs for GBJPY and create some new highs, maybe around 154 there. So however, we did fail to break through that resistance there, showing me more rejection. We tapped into it once not too long ago, last week probably, fell to the downside quite strongly, tapped into it again a few wicks above it, and then another push to the downside there. So my bias is to the downside for GBJPY. I'm expecting to see more continuation, and it will be nice to see a bit of a pullback and look for those continuations to the downside, again targeting that previous low down this area here where we had that nice spike below that trend line. So bias is to the downside for GBJPY, but we do need to stay below this level. If next week were to push to the upside, so price was to look bullish again and actually break back above this level, then you can look to change your bias and continue back to highs around this level, and at that point we'll probably take up those highs and just continue that overall bullish trend. So bias right now is the downside as long as we stay below that level. So any push we see to the upside, we're going to treat as a pullback, looking to add our shorts in to capitalize on another bigger push to the downside for GBJPY. So for next week, bias is the downside, targeting these lows down here. Again, not too sure if we'll get to that by the end of next week. Might take a week or two to get there, but expecting to see more downside continuation for GBJPY for next week, looking for those pullbacks, and then expecting to see more continuation back down to around 149,200. And up next, we're going to take a look at gold. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at gold. So for gold this week, we had a bit of consolidation. Price didn't really move too much for gold. We did see some strong movements, but overall there's no really much direction. Price is still hanging on to this same support here in the market. You see big push to the upside, tested it again, nice push to the upside. Now we're back above it, holding it as support. So as long as we maintain that for next week, I do see a push to the upside for gold. As you can see, we did have this wick to the downside, so price overall is really failing to take up this support, and I do see a push to the upside for next week for gold, testing around that 1810 level. So if I go back onto the daily, you can see when last time we held this area of support, we saw a push to the upside to around 1810, which is the area which gave us this big strong move to the downside. So I do see gold pushing to go and test that area up there. So again, you could be looking for a nice push to the upside, then look for those pullbacks to gain another push to the upside, testing that kind of 1810, 1812 area. So really nice swing opportunity there for gold, bias to the upside. But again, a key aspect for this setup to be valid is price needs to not break through this support. If price does turn bearish next week, break through this area, then we can actually expect some more downside potential, because price is now broken through that support. It's now going to act as resistance. So on that resistance, on that retest, you can look to aim for the downside around this area here, which we did not get a retest, which is around 1750. As you see, prior resistance really took off to the upside with no retest. So again, two options there for gold. I'm favoring the push to the upside rather than move to the downside. But if you do break to the downside, wait for those retests, can look to capitalize on that move to the downside as well. But overall for next week, bias is to the upside as long as we maintain respect for that support and look for those retraces, those pullbacks, capitalize on a move back up to around 1810. Of course, this resistance will probably be your first target back at those highs, because that could reject us back to the downside again if we do show respect to that level. So again, I'm aware of that, but if we do break through this level, next target will be that 1810 on the daily. So for next week, bias to the upside as long as we maintain that support, look for those buys around this area. If we do break to the downside, wait for that retest, capitalize on a move back down to 1750. And last but not least, we've got Bitcoin. So for Bitcoin this week, as you can see, we had a big push to the upside. Price is now looking very, very bullish for Bitcoin again. And we've actually gained some strong key levels, broken them to the upside. So now they'll be acting as support. So for Bitcoin, there's this key level that I was looking at last week, saying if this does hold as resistance, expect to see a move to the downside. If we break above, expect to see a move to the upside. So as you can see, we did break above just on Friday, strong close, actually on Friday, strong close to the upside there. So again, on that retrace, if we do hold this as support, I'm expecting price to push on back to those highs for Bitcoin, which is around the 64,000 mark. Again, next target is probably around 65,000 or even 70,000 if we really do take out that resistance. But Price is looks like it's on its way to the upside and expecting a move back onto highs now for Bitcoin, as long as we hold this level, which is around 55,000 mark. If we do move below that level, then price will probably hold that as resistance again. Bit of a smaller head and shoulders pattern there. There's the shoulder, head, next shoulder, and we could see another dump to the downside. But right now, as I'm speaking, Bitcoin is holding that, well, broke above that area of support. So if we do see some retrace, hold that area, could look for those buys around here, anticipating another move back into 64,000, and at that point potentially even higher. So buys is the upside for Bitcoin as long as we hold that level. Again, waiting for those retests, those pullbacks again in the 4-hourly time frame. See price is looking very bullish, taking out this previous resistance here in the market. So price is actually looking quite bullish now, taking out those highs there. So waiting for that pullback, and then if you do hold this area, targeting those highs all the way up there, and then potentially even higher after that. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the video. So I hope you all enjoyed that and found it useful. If you have any questions, or if you agree or disagree with my analysis, make sure you drop a comment down below. I'll make sure I'll get back to you guys. But thanks again for watching, and until the next one, I'll see you guys later.